Hey guys, getting started on a new project this week, and I'm going to be redoing our kitchen island. So before we get started, let me show you kind of a close-up of what I've got going on. I actually started this project a couple weeks ago, back when I was getting ready to install the new floors. So the island used to kind of have this extended piece on the front on both sides here. And this whole section actually used to be a wall that ran all the way across our kitchen before we took it down and replaced it with this load-bearing beam. So when we were taking the wall out, I just left a small section here, and then I attached a base cabinet to the back of it to form our kitchen island. But before I laid the new floors, I decided I actually wanted to make the island just one big rectangle. So I went through and I cut the sides off. These are just drywall sides because they're that old wall. So now they're exactly even with that base cabinet. And I had to do that before I did the floors so that I could lay the floors right up to the wall and there won't be any funny gaps. So I did that on this side and then did the same thing over here on this side. This island used to have a breakfast bar on this side, so kind of a higher spot here. And when I cut these two ends off, I also sawed this whole top piece off. Now, I completely forgot to get a video of that actually, but it's not terribly complicated. So all I did is I took our top off, moved it out of the way, and then I marked an even line along the back side of the wall and the front side of the wall that was even with the height of the cabinet. And then I used kind of a combination of handsaw and sawzall just to cut my way. So now it's all even along the top and on the sides and ready for a makeover. So I don't have to worry about the thickness of my trim. So what I usually do is I'll just take the straight measurements from the wall, or in this case the kitchen island, and I'll transfer those to the back of the trim boards, and then I can cut my bevel or whatever angle I need for my corners based on that measurement. Now the key here is that the back of the board is against your wall. So if the measurement from your wall matches exactly the back of your board, they'll line up every time. And I'll be honest, I don't know if this is technically the way to do it, but I've done a lot of trim in our house and this works perfectly every time because those measurements always match up. So that way you don't have to adjust for the thickness and add or subtract whatever that's gonna be. Alright, so the first step here is to finish off the framing. So I have some of the original studs through the middle here, and now I'm just going to close off both sides and the top. Now, since I'm building into an existing structure, pocket holes work really well actually, so I got all those drilled, and I'm just going to use them to put everything together. The baseboards attached, so now it's time to do these vertical trim pieces, which I was going to use those 1x6s for, but I've just been trying to figure out what to do with this weird overhang on the front of the cabinet. So I'll show you a close-up. It's just the face frame from the front of the cabinet, but it sticks out about 1/4 of an inch from this side, and it's the same thing on the other side. So what I was worried about is if I put a 1x piece of trim on here, you're gonna end up with the end of trim kind of butting up against the face frame, and I know I won't be able to hide that seam all the way. So I considered a couple different options. I even thought about just taking the two face frame sides off, but honestly I think that's just going to be more trouble than it's worth. So instead, grab these 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch aspen boards, and we're going to do a little bit of trim stacking. Now these are available at Menards. If you don't have a Menards around you, you can also a lot of times get poplar in the same dimensions at Home Depot. I ended up going with 1/2 inch thick boards for my top and bottom trim, and then 1/4 inch thick for these vertical pieces. Now let me show you what the front joint is looking like so far. So the 1/2 inch boards do stick out from the face frame along the front here a little bit, along the top and the bottom. If you don't like that look, you could use 1/4 inch thick boards for everything, which was my first plan. But when I started doing a couple samples, I actually really liked the look of these 1/2 inch pieces with just a little piece of trim there. So that really just comes down to personal preference. Okay, I recruited some extra muscle to help get the new countertops in. Alright, the countertop is on, the trim is on, and it's almost ready for paint. So now I'm just going to go through and fill all of my nail holes and seams. Now, big question is always, when do you use wood filler versus caulk? So on all of your flat surfaces, anything that should be even at the end, you want to use wood filler. And then all of the rest of your seams, anything that's a little bit offset, you're going to use caulk. So on this project, since I have the 1/2 inch boards up here and 1/4 inch boards for my verticals, I'm actually going to end up using caulk for all of these joints. If you do the same thickness as boards, you're going to want to use wood filler on these seams so that they end up looking exactly flat and even. So I'm going to use caulk on these ones and then wood filler for all of my nail holes. A couple things to keep in mind when you're doing these seams: make sure you're using paintable caulk so that you can go back and paint it after it dries. And then also it's really handy to keep either a damp rag or baby wipes around. And so when you go to smooth down the seams, you can just wipe your hand off really easily. Damp rag works great. I just use baby wipes because we have a lot of them lying around. Okay, we're ready for primer and paint. Now I'm only going to prime the raw wood sections. The MDF came pre-primed that I have along the bottom here, and then this cabinet section, I primed it the very first time that I installed this kitchen island, so I know that underneath this blue paint, it does have good primer under there, so the paint is really sticky, so I'm okay just like painting right on top of that this time. But definitely want to put primer on the raw wood to hide any imperfections or knots and make sure that the paint adheres really well to it. Now I'm just going to use a multi-purpose primer. I realize this isn't super helpful because I spilled the primer all down the front of it, but I'll link to it in the description. It's just Bullseye 123 multi-purpose primer, and I use it on a lot of projects like this. Existing cabinet before it's ready for paint, so I'm just going to scrub it down really quick with some soap and water. Now I've seen other people use TSP or more of like a degreaser for it, which works great too, but I've used soap and water on other cabinets. I've done the rest of my kitchen cabinets actually before I painted them, and it works really well, and I've never had any issues with the paint peeling or anything like that. So just going to do soap and water. It's quick and easy, and I have it on hand. So I finished up the whole bottom of the cabinet yesterday, so today I'm just going to get going on the cabinet doors and the drawer faces. Now I've just been using a regular paintbrush to cut in around all my edges where the roller won't reach, and then a foam roller to do all of the rolling. Now the foam rollers are cool because there's no nap on it, it's just a high density foam, and so it's pretty much the smoothest finish you can get without actually like spraying your cabinet. So I use this on all of my cabinets and trim actually if I'm not spraying. The other thing that you can do is you can buy nicer paint. So the trim urethane enamels from like Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore, they're self-leveling. They're super nice paint. I've used them on all of my other cabinet and trim projects I've done. I'm not using them here. I'm just gonna use the normal bare paint for the island here. And if you're gonna do that, you can add an additive to it called Floetrol, and that makes the paint self-leveling. So I'm also not doing that here. I'm keeping this very like rudimentary project. So I'm just putting normal paint on it and no additives, and it seems to be leveling all right. So I'm not worried about it, but those are my best tips and tricks if you want a super smooth finish without spraying. So regular brush, foam roller, nicer paint, or do the Floetrol.